So today is meeting number 2, November 5th, and I'm going to turn the floor over to our facilitator again for the evening. You met her last Thursday, Sylvia Flowers. Sylvia, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you for you to give us the directions for this evening.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. And I'm excited to be with this group again. I was so impressed with everybody's level of engagement and participation at the last meeting. So I'm excited to dive in and get to work. You all received the agenda for the evening. I want to thank a lot of you who continue to share comments and suggestions via email after last week's meeting. We know how invested everyone is in this work, and that really makes us appreciative. Thank you again for completing all of your pre-readings. I know that you're ready to work, and we're excited to get started. A few housekeeping items just to remind everybody that these meetings will be recorded. We're recording now so that we can share those with the community at large. Also, as you are signing in, one, go to the participants button and rename yourself with your first and last name. And then two, go to the chat box and sign in with your name, your role, and whether or not you're a parent in the district. So here's our agenda for tonight. We are ready to dive right in and reflect on our objectives and our priorities for this work. Next slide, Amanda. So here are our 4 objectives or our 4 goals, and the areas in bold are what we're really going to focus on this evening. One is reflecting on the current hybrid learning plan and identifying areas for further improvement, and then beginning to make those recommendations that we'll be able to take to the Superintendent, Board of Education, and the leadership team that will help us refine the hybrid learning plan in December. I also wanted to remind folks, as I was reading the framework in preparation for this meeting, what stood out to me were the 3 priorities for decision making. One is at the front of everything is the health and safety of all the students. 2, the ability to provide consistent, high quality learning experience for the students. And 3 is to stay grounded in the district's commitment to equity. And when I think about some of the norms that we talked about, I know that we want to keep students at the center of all of our conversations, and we want to assume positive intent. So let's jump right in. You received several documents in advance. We did a lot of reflecting in the week, and we heard a lot from you all. And when we categorized those things, we saw 6 areas that we grouped together. And we're going to spend time today digging into those. So we heard consensus on 4 areas that we're going to focus on today. Changing the current plan so that students can maintain their class and or teacher. 2, looking at the schedule that's outlined in the current plan and identifying areas for improvement. 3, addressing lunch in order to lengthen the school day. And 4, considering the in-person experiences that will help with the socialization and enrichment opportunities that we know students are craving during this time. The 5th and 6th area, space for childcare, we feel like that's an area that is impacted by the first 4 topics. So once we have some possibilities and options underway for the first 4 topics, then I think we'll come back and think about some of the areas around childcare that we need to push into. Number 6, we heard a lot about, and that's one of the reasons we've engaged this group, is so that we can figure out how to be clear and transparent about the thinking behind the decision making, what some of the trade-offs we've considered, and then what some of the challenges have been. And so number 6 really undergirds every decision and all of the work that this panel will be doing as we move to refinement. Did anybody have any other comments or questions based on what they heard last week? Dr. Kelly, was there anything that I left out before we move on?
No, though there were the consensus items, and there were also, and I think you're probably about to move on to that, requests for additional information.
Yep. Next slide. So we spent a lot of time also thinking about, well, hearing from you about questions that you had, things that hadn't been extremely clear, that we wanted to make sure that we highlighted here. Um, One of the things I noticed when I read the framework for reopening is that these items are within the guidebook, but we wanted to pull those out and highlight a few of those. Dr. Kelly, do you want to pick a couple that have been most talked about in the community?
Yes. First, I want to just bring to your attention that we did share this list. It was a document called Requested Information by SAP. So you should be able to bring that up now if you want to take a look at it as I very quickly go over. But the responses to each of the questions that you see in front of you, such as how were the metrics chosen? It includes like where you can reference in the framework more detailed information, but it includes like the responses to that. Are there plans to clean the air? What has been done with ventilation? There's a whole host of information that Jeannie Keene, our Senior Director of Buildings and Grounds, included there. Information around how contact tracing would be done. So I would really, if you haven't had a chance yet to look at that document, again, it's called Requested Information by SAP. I see several of you are in there now. Please do take a few moments just to read through. We will not be quizzing you or anything like that. But once again, we wanted to let you know that a lot of the questions that you had have been addressed by members of the team and are there for you to take a look at. And you could definitely reach out to us or, bring to our attention any questions that you might have the next time that we come back together. So I'll turn the floor back over to you, Sylvia.
Great, thank you. Um, the other area, and there's not a slide for this, so we'll stay on this slide for now. The third thing we wanted to talk about was, again, when we talk about transparency and getting the community input for this, we know that we want to get a survey out to parents to understand what they are interested in. You all received a copy of the draft parent survey on November 2nd. And many of you have provided comments and feedback to Amanda. Amanda, I will ask you to give us an update on where the survey stands now and give us a little input on what the logistics will be for getting that out and how much time we'll have to collect feedback from parents.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for all of the feedback. I heard from several of you and some of the comments were really, really helpful. I'm actually going to, sorry, I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to put the link. You all should have this, but I'm just going to put it in the chat so you can access. Just a minute. Zoom. I don't know if anyone's in there and can just put it in the chat for me. I'm having trouble because I'm not sure things are.
I can do it.
Thank you. So yeah, basically, I did incorporate a lot of these suggestions, and I think the biggest change that I wanted to point out to the group is that since we shared this last week, kind of thinking about how we're dealing with the data on the back end and the information that's really going to be crucial for us. The big question is really that, like, how many students are going to be on site and how many students are not. So knowing that, we decided to kind of pivot to a one survey per student, which will make the data a lot cleaner. So if you look at it now, instead of sort of like having to deal with parents indicating like child 1, child 2, child 3, which is very messy on the back end for us, they'll be able to just say school, grade level, what services their students receive. We're going to do the demographics, and that's going to give us like really specific data. And we're going to be able to tie it back to all of that in terms of how they answer that big question for us. So I really just tried to streamline the questions. I took out the ratings. I heard from a couple of people that can be confusing for parents. So I took that out. And I think really the big purpose, I think, of this one will just be, are you going to come back on site or not? And why? What are some of the big concerns for families? So that's sort of where we're at right now. The plan would be to get this out tomorrow. And I think right now I have in there, I might even just have it close on Wednesday evening, because that'll give me time between Wednesday and then our meeting on Friday morning to be able to share out on Friday some of those findings from the survey. And we typically leave them open for like 5 or 6 days. So that's sort of right in line. And then I also wanted to say that Dr. Kelly and I had a conversation today with Thought Exchange, which some of you may be familiar with. The high school uses Thought Exchange. I think our library just started using it in Oak Park as well. But the high school has been using it throughout their like remote learning and also their planning process. And we have talked to them about utilizing a Thought Exchange for this planning cycle for us. Which would allow us, I think, to just kind of get some like rich feedback from the community. And I think it also takes some pressure off of this one survey, where we do just kind of need that one piece of data in terms of like the numbers, so we can plan accordingly. And then we would have that Thought Exchange, which we would run, I think we said maybe by mid-November. And that would allow families to provide feedback that is a little more specific and digs into our plan a little bit more, especially right now when we just don't know that much. You know, that would be kind of what we're thinking right now. So I don't know if anyone has any like questions, thoughts, concerns related to the survey.
Hey, Amanda, can I ask, this is Faith, just question around this. First of all, I agree, the feedback has been phenomenal, just some of the changes and things, and I think it's been incredibly thoughtful. I wonder if, because it's going to be a quicker turnaround, do we want to kind of include a little blurb of that within our email out to families? I just want them to understand why we're asking to have it back so quickly, just so they, just that transparency purposes, because it's really going to kind of drive the work that we're doing. So I don't know if that would make sense, or if that would be helpful for people.
Yeah, that was, and thank you, because that was the other thing I wanted to mention. Some of the feedback I got, and some of you may saw that the high school also sent out a survey. For them, it was like very simple. Obviously, we have, I think, a more complex planning process because of all our schools, but I will provide context in the email when it goes out. So I will be sure to include a couple sentences about kind of like what we're looking for here, and that we will have like another opportunity to provide feedback that is more specific to our hybrid learning plan.
And Amanda, I see the hand raised for Julia.
Yep.
Julia? You're on mute if you're trying to talk. Or maybe you raised your hand mistakenly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Yes, great, good. Hi, this is Julia Holland. I'm the epidemiologist and a parent at Lincoln. I just wanted to ask a quick question here. It seems, based on what Amanda has just shared, that we're sort of functioning under the assumption that any family who wants to have their children return to school will be offered that opportunity. And I just wanted to put a little bit of pressure on that assumption because I think from the epi side and from the science side, one of the safest things we can do is limit the number of children in a classroom, limit the number of people in a building. And so I think I would caution us to, before we kind of word things in such a way or work under the assumption that every family will be offered an opportunity to return to school, maybe it's worth thinking about prioritizing highest need, highest risk, or prioritizing in some other way in order to get the number of children in a classroom, the number of people in a building down. So I'm not saying that that is the right course, but I wanted to, I'm hearing that that's what's being assumed, and I wanted to put a little pressure on them.
So that is a really excellent point. And it's one of the reasons why the information from parents is helpful to us, because it will allow us in our planning to better understand the type of cohorting that we might have to do, because we would not be, as you mentioned, we would be unable to safely have 100%, if 100% of families wanted to send their kids back. So I think that that's part of the rationale for this real quick and dirty, back of the envelope. What are your thoughts about returning in person? The other thing that I would
great.
say is that based on the information that we currently have from ISB and the Illinois Department of Public Health, and Jim Hackett, please correct me if I'm wrong, that there are certain individuals under the Illinois Restore Plan that as long as the state is not at the phase 5, those students really, we should be providing them with an option to receive their education, not coming in person. And the same thing for staff as well. So I don't think that this is assuming that 100% of students are going to be either able to or desire, that they will desire to be back in person.
Sure, and I totally agree with you. That's what I'm hearing from community members, other families. But I think I would caution Amanda or whomever to word the survey in such a way that we're not saying, will you return in December, but would you like to return in December? If you had the opportunity to return in December, would you? Something that sounds a little bit more conditional, because I think I can imagine as a family that it would be frustrating to have indicated on the survey that I want to return in December or January or whenever, and then not be offered that opportunity. So I think I would just couch our language a little bit for that inevitability that we may not be able to offer every family their preferred model in January.
Definitely understood. Sylvia, I see other questions in the chat room, but
Yes,
because we
me
really
too.
want to spend the majority of this meeting in the breakout sessions, I'll table them for now, and we'll forward.
To wrap that up, I just want to say that if anyone has any like quick suggestions, I would need that by tonight. So you can send me an email tonight because we are getting that survey out tomorrow. But yeah.
Right. And this is not, again, Amanda, to have families commit to anything.
Right.
It's more so to get a sense of, no, I don't care what you offer, I'm not sending my child back. Or, well, it depends, on what the plan is. And it's more so for us to have, again, a real quick and dirty back of the envelope. What will be the demand for an in-person? Because that really will help to drive the plan in terms of some of the topics that you're discussing tonight, such as the length of day, such as the changing teachers. So it is information that would be really helpful. So
Right. I think as we learned in our last meeting, the purpose of the survey is to get additional parent feedback so that we can use that information to guide any revisions to a hybrid learning plan. I think there's one question about are we singularly focused with a plan to move forward with hybrid in January? I don't think that decision can be made right now, particularly as we continue to watch the data on what's happening in the community and what's
Right.
happening in Illinois. But if that opportunity presents itself, we would like to have a plan that the community is supportive of and that the board feels comfortable approving and moving forward. And that also gives the district and the leadership team enough time to do the work to implement the plan.
Right. And as I've been saying to the community since last summer, is that districts have to be very agile in being able to move back and forth between remote, hybrid. Um, I don't anticipate that we would ever be able to do fully like in person because of the density and the size of our district. But the purpose of having a plan is not necessarily saying that we're going to execute that plan. The execution is really dependent upon the metrics and other mitigation strategies that we're ready to implement. But having the plan is and ready to go that the board and the community feels comfortable with is really the purpose of bringing together this advisory panel. So
Thank you.
you're
Thank
in.
you. And I remember last week, someone said it best that COVID is here to stay and we need a plan to ensure high quality learning experiences for students. And this is one way that we can be prepared to deliver that if we have the opportunity to bring kids back onto campuses. There was one other thought before we begin to dig into the consensus areas, and that was how do we ensure that we get parents to complete this information? And I did want to take just a few minutes to think about how we get as much input as we can from parents so that it helps us shape what some of the options will be.
So are you talking about this quick and dirty back of the envelope survey that Amanda's?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so I'm going to, and we have a lot of scientists on the line here. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, like, for our planning purposes, for this particular survey, I don't know that 100% is the goal. I do think that you want to have a statistically significant count that it would help us to project for our planning. If this is something where, like, we are eventually getting to the point where we have a plan and we need families to like commit like what they're doing, then I think that that's like the place where we would want to make sure that all of our families are answering the survey.
Okay. And so the primary mechanism right now will be an email blast to parents just to get the quick overview, a quick information.
So Amanda, you could explain, but she has a variety of communication channels
Got
that we
it.
use to
We'll
make
do,
sure that.
yeah, we'll do an email. I will send the principals something to include in their communication to families. I'll send something to the PTOs to include in their newsletters as well. We'll put it on social media. If it would be helpful, I can provide all of you with blurbs if you're active in Oak Park social media groups and you want to encourage parents in Oak Park to complete the survey. That would be great. Those are the big ones. If there's anything else, and we can also make paper copies available at our meal distributions, which we've done in the past.
And we've also done in the past direct blasts to families, just using some of the direct messaging. But I think I would, Amanda, recommend like the use of this group with the blurb, the same way that we do with our principals as well. All right, I'm going to push us along. I'm sorry, Sylvia, but I want to make sure that there's like enough time for the large majority of this meeting.
And we are right on schedule. So we are transitioning now to our breakout discussion. As we mentioned, there are 4 topics that we want you all to dig into. And we are going to break you up into small groups. We want you to dive deeper into these 4 topics, and we want to be able to hear from everybody. We've allocated about an hour for this portion of our meeting. And so on average, we estimate that you should spend about 15 minutes on each area, using the guiding questions as prompts to consider. We've also provided in the materials for the day a note catcher for you to use that we would like to collect at the end of the session. When you get into your breakout groups, it would be helpful if you all list the names of your participants, assign a note taker and a facilitator / timekeeper that will keep you moving forward. And are we ready to go? We have 10 groups for people to participate in. We also have on the next slide, the order in which we want you to go because we want to make sure that you get to every topic area. So you might not be going in.
Before you go over that, do you
Mhm.
mind if I just kind of go over really quickly the guiding
framing of
question?
the, yep.
So we're asking each group to discuss the 4 topics.
Which should
Amanda,
be on the next slide, I think. Guiding questions are on the next slide.
yeah. And for each of the topics, you're going to ask yourself, is this something that the district should address? If it's a no, that's fine. But just like, what's the reason why the district should not address that topic? If it's a yes, then we're asking the groups to identify some possibilities of the how to address it. And what are the trade-offs and challenges to those possibilities, because there's always trade-offs and challenges. And then like what additional opportunities are there to think outside of the box for addressing that particular challenge. And as we get closer, as what are the options or possibilities that get us closer to the consensus, knowing that some parents' needs may not be met and others will have their needs met. So just kind of really thinking through each of the 4. And it's okay if you think that any of the 4 are not things that the district should address, but we would just like want to know the reason why. And then as Sylvia was saying, I think on the next slide, you will see, and the breakout sessions will automatically like take you there. But we're asking you to start with different topics so that we can make sure that like each of the topics are covered. So again, you'll have about an hour. Your timekeeper should give you 15 minutes each, roughly, give or take, for each topic. And also on your note catcher that I emailed to you for your assignment, as well as you'll see a copy on the calendar invite. Your note catcher should just make sure that for each of the groups that we have like a copy of your notes before we take leave.
Okay, could I'm gonna jump in and give directions for how the groups will work. So right now I am going to put in the chat a document that I'd like you to open, and it's actually the document that you see on the slide right there. So you'll see the 10 groups. You'll see the order with which we want you to discuss each topic. And part of that was we wanted to make sure that, you know, if there was someone was running short on time, that it wasn't the same topic that we ran out of time for, if that makes sense. So we ask that you follow that order. In a moment, Zoom has a new feature where I will create the 10 breakout rooms, and then you will get to choose your room, but you will choose your room based on the group you're in. So for example, Ebony Lofton's in group 1, so she will choose breakout room 1. Emily Fenske's in group 2, she will choose breakout room 2. If you have any challenges or issues getting to your room, or need support, just hang tight and I will make sure that you get to your room. So right now you should open that document and have it in front of you and locate what room you're in. If you don't see your name there for some reason, I went with the information that was provided to me. So if for some reason you are not there in the document, we will find a home for you. So I'm going to open the rooms now so folks can start to make their way into those spaces.
Right, everybody. I heard a lot of great discussions happening in the breakout rooms, and we really appreciate you all wrestling with these tough topics. And now you have a sense for what your district leadership teams have been wrestling with in order to develop the plan. In order to maximize our time together, but also stay on schedule, you will see you're going to have 1 minute quick wraparound, or less than that if you want to keep us on track, to either share an aha or the idea that your group is most passionate about. Dr. Kelly, should I just start with group 1 and go?
Yes.
All right, group 1. Either your biggest aha from this conversation or the idea that your group feels most passionate about implementing. Who is my spokesperson from group 1? All right, I'm moving to group 2.
I'll just say, I'll jump in.
Thank you.
I think our biggest kind of aha moment, I think, came at the end, if I could say, for my group, just talking about like all of these aspects. We really ultimately came back to talking to teachers about their feelings truly about coming back to work. Because although we can plan for all of these great things, and our previous survey indicated like 30% of staff felt uncomfortable in some capacity, whether it be to like a family member's health or their own, about returning. So the likelihood of, many of those people taking like FMLA leave would be high. And so when we're thinking about logistics and operational capabilities, it would be difficult to run schools without teachers and staff.
Got it. Thank you. Group 3, biggest aha.
I'll talk for the group. I think we had the most conversation around 1. I don't know if there was like I had an aha, but I don't know.
What was topic 1 for your group? Sorry, we switched
I guess it was
the
our
order.
third topic. So it would have been theme 1. So change current plan so students maintain current class teacher.
Yep.
That was one that was very little conversation needed to say yes for it. And then starting to go through and operationalize and do all that. So that was just one that we had the least amount of debate about yes or no on.
Got it. Group 4.
Hi, I'm doing group 4. And our biggest through line that came through in all 4 topics was about relationships and how important they are. About keeping the current class and teachers so important. We cannot disrupt those relationships if we want our kids to succeed. For the schedule, we need to make sure we are hearing all of our voices throughout the district. We need to pick up the phone. We need to call the lunch ladies back if we need to. Talk to Principal Christian. He texts, he emails, he robocalls, he sends the Pony Express. But we need to make sure we're talking to our more disconnected families to bring their voice into this. So also with those in-person experiences, it is important. And we see kids who are keeping their cameras off and who are walking away. And relationships. It's all about relationships. That's
all right. It. Thank you. Group 5.
Here.
You guys, I can talk for 5. Hold on one second. So we actually talked about quite a few things. This is my life. In our group. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways also seemed to kind of come at the end. And team, please let me know if I'm not on correct. But you're talking about the middle school and kind of this idea that if we are not cohorting students, is there some more potential around how we could support students in this space? And so really kind of get into the crux of what our community values. So thinking about our middle school families and what they really value, and then also understanding how they really value at the elementary schools. And then once we have that information, I think then we feel like we'll be able to really devise a plan that will be successful.
Thank you. Group 6.
I think I was going to talk and Gina was going to jump in, but I think we had a very diverse conversation, and I'm not going to be able to cohesively explain it, but we did spend a lot of time talking about the teacher and trying to maintain the teacher and the vast difficulty of that if we do go hybrid. We talked about the live streaming option and the difficulties that would put a lot of stress on the teachers, not knowing if that's really a possibility. But if we do hybrid, really just talking about how would it be possible to keep the same teachers, or is that we just have to accept the fact that it would be not possible? And we talked about potentially giving parents options to stick with the same teacher no matter what position, remote versus hybrid. So we talked about that. We talked about other options for changing the schedule, different possibilities for lunch and the difficulties with that. So I'm sorry. Gina, and what else did you want to say?
No, I thought you did great. We talked about if you change teachers, then that would negatively affect the social emotional well-being of our students. But if you live stream, it could negatively impact the educational system too for our students and what they're getting educationally wise. So, but then we did talk about, and I thought one thing that was interesting when we talked about the enrichment and socialization, if we stay remote, is it a possibility to do some of the clubs or extracurriculars after school still, even if we're remote? We talked about that a little bit too.
Thank you. Group 7.
Adrian, do you want to go since you have the notes?
Sure. I think one of the biggest aha moments we had kind of connects back to that last week, which is the why. Because we really think families need to understand in a hybrid model, school is not going to be school as our kids or our students remember it being. And really looking at what is it that families really need, and how do we create a schedule that meets those needs? And because we're afraid of this nervousness of kids coming back or families coming back and just not being happy with the experience, because it's not, you can't do school, all the good things we've learned, best way to engage kids, small grouping, hands-on, like that stuff can't necessarily live in a socially distanced classroom environment. So I think really understanding the why was a big point of our group. Lunch, just having a safety person on our team, it's a big staffing issue. And the food allergy concern is huge as well. So
Great, thank you. Group 8.
Hi, this
One aha or the idea that you are most passionate about implementing.
Sure. There were a couple standouts. One was the idea that parent-teacher groups or the park district could be partners in helping us to address some of the decreased physical activity or the need for after-school types of socialization, behavioral, emotional development.
Got it.
That was a good idea. But also this idea of prioritizing for the K through 2 and understand that elementary and middle school needs are going to look different. And also for the lunches, understanding the potential for children to feel stigmatized who might be singled out for receiving reduced or no cost lunches, and so how that's implemented is of concern.
Great. Group 9.
Hi, I'm representing Group 9. Our aha idea, it's a little wild, which is to say we're wrapping up the year on at the end of December, and then you're going to start a new community in January. You'll be assigned a teacher, and you're gonna build your new community up. So it would be kind of more of like a way to help people's attitudes, and how you're kind of thinking about it philosophically about what your school year is all about. So that was a little unique idea we had.
Great, thank you. So reframing the concept. Thank you. And group 10.
I could speak for us. So I feel like got most animated talking about lunch, and like, does that open up possibilities for us in terms of extending instructional time on site, if we can figure out the lunch issue. We talked about the fact that other districts are doing it, and can we learn from those districts? And one of our teachers in the group, Sheila, mentioned, like, our teachers have duty-free lunch, and I'm sure there are other districts that do as well. How are they handling that through the contract? And again, are there options out there that would potentially just open us up to other schedule opportunities?
Great, thank you. Thank you. We're at 7:55. I so appreciate your time and attention in wrestling with these tough issues. One next step is for you to save your notes with your group number and email them to Amanda, hopefully by tonight, so that we can go through and look through your comments and get prepared for our next meeting, where we anticipate going back to our big theme areas with some of these great possibilities on how to implement. Next slide. As we mentioned, we are meeting again next week on Friday morning. We will be sharing this conversation with the community and working to share out the notes in the early part of next week and synthesizing some of the good thoughts that you have. Dr. Kelly, is there anything that you want to add to close us out?
No, I think just looking ahead, if any of you would like to join us Tuesday evening, one of the things that the board has asked us to do is us, as if, like, I would say the administrative team to do is provide an update on this planning. Amanda will continue to share out with the community, similar to what we did last week, a quick recap along with the recording of our meeting. But Tuesday evening for the board meeting at 7 p.m., one of the special reports is a quick recap of the work. We are thinking next Friday that we may have, not 100% certain, but we may have a little preview of what the thought exchange would be, so that you would see that. And also, just based on your aha moments, one of the things that I'm thinking of that may be beneficial for the group is perhaps seeing if we could get a guest or two to come visit and share what their experiences have been in their district. I'm primarily looking to folk who have had students return, and what some of the challenges have been, as well as our ability to ask some questions. So again, not 100% certain, but I will follow up this evening with the core planning team for next week, and we'll get that agenda out to you, similar to what we did this week. So thank you so much. The 2 hours of your time that you could have spent doing anything, and you did not count it robbery to spend this time with us. And I do not take that for granted. So thank you so much for that. Sylvia, thank you so much. And Amanda, Carrie, Cam, for your help with the logistics for this evening. And one final plug in the chat room, if you did not put in your name, if you're here, if you could please put in your name, role, and organization, would greatly appreciate it. So, Sylvia?
I think that is a great segue to saying good night. Be safe, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.